you'll notice that you can access the version history for Invoice by clicking the little icon in the top right-hand corner of the screen. Selecting previous versions can be done just by clicking the timestamp for the particular version, and any changes that were made for that version should be highlighted in yellow. To close the version history, just hit the X, as you can't make edits to an invoice or use the Actions menu for an invoice when you're viewing the version history. Same goes for invoice lines. Opening the invoice line will reveal the version history for the particular invoice line, if there are any edits that have been made. And as you make edits as part of your test to any of the individual details, perhaps adding comments, changing individual parameters of your line or your invoice, you should come back to the version history to see that those changes are being tracked by the version history. You will find the version history link or the version history icon in the top right-hand corner of the screen. Clicking on that will open the version history. While the version history is open, you won't have access to any actions for that organization record. You'll be viewing the selected version. Any changes that were made for that version should be highlighted in yellow. You can look back at previous versions by clicking the timestamp of a previous version. And when you want to dismiss the version history, you can use the X in the version history pane. Making edits to any of the aspects of an organization record, to notes or comments, adding alternative names, changing alternative names, and so on should be tracked in the version history. Not all accordions will be supported.
Starting with the Sunflower release, Folio supports batch allocations at the ledger level. To do so, a user goes into the Finance app to the Ledger tab. So select a valid ledger. It doesn't have to be active, but select a ledger, and in this case I will choose Joe's Ledger. And in the Actions menu, you now see a new section called Allocation Tools, which contains several lines: Batch Allocations, Download Allocation Worksheet, and Upload Allocation Worksheet. For this video, we will be working directly with the Batch Allocations line. Clicking on Batch Allocations, we are now required to choose a fiscal year. We can choose a current or future fiscal year. Previous fiscal years cannot be modified using the batch allocation tool. So I'm going to choose the current fiscal year, and a new screen opens. This new screen shows all of the funds that are associated with this ledger. In this case, we have 2 funds with active budgets and that are in active status, and we have a 3rd fund that is in inactive status and has no money allocated. We also have the ability to manage allowable encumbrance and expenditure percentages. We can put descriptions into the transaction, and we can apply any transaction tags. This is useful so that you can group batch allocations and make notes as to what you did and why you did them, especially in the middle of a fiscal year if a new allocation comes available. So I'm going to make a few changes here. And right now we notice that Fund 1 has a current allocation of $25,000. Fund 2 has a current allocation of $40,000. So I will make Fund 3 active, and I will give it an active budget status. And here I can change the allocation. If I try to give this a negative allocation, I will receive an error. So the allocation needs to be 0 or positive. So I'm going to leave this as a 0 allocation. We'll come back to that later. I'm going to increase this allocation by another 10,000, and I'm going to take 5,000 away from this allocation. It's rare, but it does happen. Let's apply a description to these. Now that I've got data, I'm happy with it. Notice Save and Close is grayed out. I need to click the Recalculate button. Recalculate then does all of the validations and shows all of the changes. So with that, I now see that the total allocated after has been filled in. So it does the math, it ensures that everything is valid and will tell me if anything is not going to save correctly. So in this case, everything looks good. I've not received any errors, and I can save and close. What it now shows is that budgets have been updated, and a new budget was created. So if I go into Fund 3, there was no budget before, now it has a $0 allocation. Oh darn, I forgot to allocate money. I'm going to go back into the batch allocations to fiscal year 2025, and I'm going to make an allocation to this Fund 3. So I'm going to assign 25,000 to this with the transaction description of, recalculate. And now it's going to show an alert. Fund has not changed and will not be updated. Neither of these have been changed, so they will not be updated. Only Fund 3 will be updated. That looks good to me, so I am going to save and close. And we've noticed that the summary has once again changed. And scrolling down and looking at the funds, we now see that they have changed. Moving forward, if we try to do the next fiscal year, so fiscal year 2026, this time none of the budgets exist. The funds have not been activated. No budget status exists. And I can just quickly go through and assign random amounts of money. So I'll do 50,000 here, 40,000 here, and 25,000. Do a recalculate, make sure that looks happy. It does. Save and close. And now allocations have been updated and budgets have been created. So now we see that the ledger has, again, the current funds, but then if we go into the individual funds, so we look at Joe Fund 1, we have a current budget and a planned budget. Updating allocations in batch can also be accomplished via CSV, upload and download. Again, we start on the Ledger tab, having opened a ledger. So begin with downloading an allocation worksheet. As with the UI batch allocation, you are first prompted to select a fiscal year. So we will select fiscal year 2025 and confirm. A worksheet is generated and automatically downloaded. We then open that spreadsheet as a CSV. And we see all our budgets and funds show up. You might want to expand your columns a little bit. The spreadsheet is a little more involved. There are a few columns I want to highlight. So fiscal year is obviously necessary, fund code, UUID, and budget UUID. The UUIDs are very important for matching. Without a UUID, Folio will not know which funds and budgets exactly you are modifying. Additionally, you will see budget names and then the initial and current allocations. So the initial allocation is where what the first allocation was, and the current allocation will reflect any possible changes that may have been made over time. You will primarily be interested in modifying this column, allocation adjustment. This number can be positive or negative. So we have a current allocation of 35,000, so I can make an adjustment of another 10,000 here. And in this one, I'll make an allocation adjustment of minus 5,000. And in this one, just to trigger an error, I will create negative 30,000. As with the user interface, we can also add tags and descriptions. So I'll do upload. And now I can save this file. And now upload the batch allocation worksheet. So take that exact worksheet that we just worked on, load it up and hit confirm. And it loads in what we just did, but because we have an invalid allocation decrease, it will not allow us to save this. So we can change this to negative 20,000. Oops. Negative 20,000. And now we recalculate. So the total recalculated value will be 45,000, 30,000, and 5,000. Note, we could have changed the allowable encumbrance and allowable expenditures, but we can also leave those blank if they're already blank. Similarly, fund statuses just load in as they were. So we can go ahead and save that, and allocations will update successfully. That is how you upload allocations via CSV. The claiming app in Folio supports both EDI and CSV claim files. In order to use the claiming app, a certain amount of setup needs to be performed. To begin with, in the organization, in order to claim, you have to add an appropriate integration to the organization record. So we've opened an organization record, and under integration details, we see a list of existing integrations, and we can add a new integration. Let's go ahead and look at this EDI integration. We'll go into edit mode just so you can see what that looks like. And we have, just like with an ordering integration, we have the integration name and description and all of that same information. But there's a new drop-down of integration type, claiming and ordering, transmission method of file download and FTP, and then a file format of EDI or CSV. This all works exactly the same way as ordering integrations, except that CSV and download are now supported. In order to generate a claim file, an organization must have a claim integration created for it. The second piece of configuration is in the order. When creating a new order or editing an existing order, it is necessary to have claiming enabled. So we'll go ahead and switch to our open orders, and I will choose one at random, go into the PO line, and we can see that claim active is set. So going into the details on this, claiming active is checked, there is a claim interval defined, and importantly, there is a receipt date. If you neglect to put a receipt date in the PO line, then Folio will not know when to expect the piece. However, if you say, I'll know the receipt date later, and then go into the receiving app and assign an expected date at that time, that will also work. So if we put all the pieces together, I'm going to go ahead and create a new order. I'm going to use books by Joe's Books, and an order type in this case we'll do a one time, close that, and then add a new PO line for the piece we've just created, and we will do sample claiming title. Make sure that claiming is active. I'm going to leave the receipt date blank in this case. Fill in any other additional information that's required just so we can finish creating the order. Assign a location. Then when we open the order, we can go into the receiving app and create a receiving piece. So here we have an expected piece, but there is no expected date on it. Therefore, even though we have claiming turned on, it will never become late until we give it an expected receiving date. One other piece, if you are creating new receiving pieces for testing claiming, you also have the ability now within the receiving app to mark a piece late. So in addition to save and create another quick receive and send claim, mark late is now an option. And here we see that the status has changed from expected to late, and we still see the expected receipt date. Once you've made sure that your vendor has a valid integration, that your PO lines are set to enable claim, and there is an expected date, then you're ready to go ahead with claiming. The claiming app in Folio allows users to generate files of claims to send to vendors in order to claim materials that are late to arrive. So switching to the claiming app, by default, we see a list of all receiving pieces that the system has identified as late. This can either be late because the claim delay has been exceeded, claiming is active, and the expected date has been exceeded, or a user has manually set a piece to late. For instance, with a serial, if the user noticed that the subsequent piece has come in, but the previous piece has not, they can manually set the status to late. Regardless, by default, all pieces with a status of late and a receiving and a claim active of yes will appear in the claiming app by default. If this list gets long or unwieldy, in addition to pagination, there are also several filters and facets that can be applied. For instance, you can narrow down to a single vendor or specific types of orders. You can look for specific locations, specific acquisition units. or even custom fields. So there's a lot of flexibility regarding how you manage your claims. But by default, opening the Claims app will show everything that is claimable. On the right, there is an Actions menu, and we notice that all of the actions, or the claim actions, are disabled because we have not selected any pieces. You can select many or all pieces for the claiming action. In this case, if I select one or two, I can then go into Actions, Send Claim, Delay Claim, or Mark as Unreceivable. If I mark them as unreceivable, then they will move to the unreceivable accordion in claiming. Clicking Delay Claim will allow you to specify a date in the future at which they will once again become late, and Send Claim will generate the claim file. So let's select a couple of late pieces. So this is late, and we'll take these two that are late. We have a late title with a chronology of 2024, and then we have a monograph that is just simply late, and we'll want to claim both of those for this example. And we simply go to Actions and Send Claim. Now, I happen to know that the organization selected, in this case Joe's Books, has a claiming integration that was set up. A full description of that is available in another video. If there is no claiming integration set up, you will receive an error that the claim did not work because no integration has been set up. Sending the claim prompts you, when does the claim expiry date? So how long before you send your second claim? So let's put that at the end of the month. We can make any notes that we want. So let's say first claim, save and close. And now we get a message. Claims are currently being processed. Please check Export Manager for job status. So we'll go into Export Manager in just a minute. And how do we know that this actually worked? So if I uncheck late and check claim sent, I now see the two titles that I just claimed. Incidentally, you can use this interface to view any and all receiving pieces simply by changing the receiving status and claim active status. And this can give you an idea of other pieces that you may want to act on for whatever reason. Switching over to Export Manager. Under the All tab, we see two new job types, Orders EDI and Orders CSV. And then in the Organizations tab, we have integration types of claims and orders. And you can really work from whichever tab works for you. I'm going to click on Claims. So we have a successful job ID of 01, successful, and the export method is Joe Books Claiming, which is the name of the integration I used for claiming Joe's books. Details here, we show the start and end time. It was successful. We see a file name and where it was sent to. Export Manager does support FTP transmission of EDIFACT files, so you can manage those exactly the same as you would an EDIFACT order. In this case, for the purpose of viewing a claim file, CSV is just a little bit easier. You have the exact same actions you have with sending an EDI file, where you can rerun it, which regenerates the file, resend it, which takes the existing file and sends it again, and for a download that's really kind of redundant, it doesn't matter, or you can simply download the file. So downloading the file, it's done. We'll go ahead and open that. And we now see a list of the two files to claim. So we've got a POL number, vendor order number, account number, the title from piece. If there's a display summary, it shows. One of the pieces has a chronology, and we have the quantity of pieces to claim.